Hello everyone and welcome to this new edition of Dassault System live event dedicated to empowering cities in the digital era. Thank you for joining us, all of you online. I know there are hundreds of people connected today. I'm Asha Sampath and I'll be your host today. My mission, among other things, will be introducing the topics, the speakers, and also asking you guys a few questions, but also being the timekeeper, which is key to make sure that we're on track and remain on time. And so, as I mentioned, you'll be able to interact and talk to us throughout our event today. If you have any questions at any time, feel free to type them in the chat box. It's actually quite simple. So we have dedicated live chat moments throughout this event today to answer to your questions. Probably let's just take a quick test. Let's see if it's working fine. So start with the first question for you. So how many inhabitants are there in the city or state where you live? Less than 1,000, more than 10,000, more than 100,000, more than 1 million, and finally more than 10 million. So let's see, we will get back to the results later. Take your time to see if it's working great and feel comfortable, with the app and the platform. So I think it's now time to begin. Let me just kick off with our topic today. So our topic today is empowering cities in the digital era, and the content of this program has been designed especially for you. So what I mean by you is you local and global players in the various sectors in the cities, territories, and construction areas, whether you're a city official, an urban planner, business stakeholder in city planning, an engineer or project leader. The purpose actually of this event is to show you what new tools and platforms are available now to help you define the right policies to deliver on your sustainability goals and offer the best experience possible for you and your citizens. So to explore different angles and making cities more resilient and sustainable, I'm joined today in the studio by Dassault Systems experts. So they are here to share concrete examples of how they have been partnering with cities across the globe and what benefits they have generated in the process. And we will also be hearing from one of Dassault Systems' long-term city planning partners, Arup. So to kick off today's session, please welcome in the studio with me in Paris here, Simon Ufto, Vice President, Construction, Cities and Territories. Hi,
Hello.
Simon. It's good to have you. And on my right, Guillaume Lenoël, Construction, Cities and Territories Industry Solutions Experience, Senior Manager at Dassault System. I've made it. Right. So as you can see, we are social distance, right? So you see my hands there, right? So we're 2 meters away. And we were wearing our masks before we walked in the studio. We removed them. And obviously, we have taken all the precautions for the safety of everyone. Right, so it's time to begin. Let's start with the global city development trends and challenges right after this. So back in the studio, so Simon, it's great to have you guys here. So I will start with you, Simon. So it's more critical, more than ever before, for cities to become more sustainable. Sustainability is a very key topic. So what are the biggest challenges for cities today?
So I think first we need to define sustainability. So we can look at the Sustainability Development Goals of the United Nations, but we will focus today mostly on two topics: CO2 emissions and the consumption of natural resources. And among the challenges, one of them is, of course, a global population, which is going to go more and more in cities. We expect to have 2/3 of the global population being in cities by 2050. And all of this happens in a context. And as an example of this context, we have the 2020 year, which is an extraordinary year with fires, with COVID-19 crisis, with as well a lot of budget constraints. And so the cities have to operate their organizations with this budget constraint, which is actually very tough. And they have, of course, to sustain the very high expectations that citizens have towards their standard of living with health, well-being, comforts.
So cities have had huge pressure, and especially the local authorities.
Of course. And so what we have seen actually this year as well is a balance of power between central governments and local governments. And we have seen that local governments, cities, were actually in the front line to take leadership on this type of challenges. Sustainability being one of them, of course.
So you mentioned COVID-19. Obviously, we cannot start the show without speaking about what's happening currently. I mean, right now, crisis that took us by surprise and is still unfolding today. So how are you at Dassault System able to support cities' response? Probably give us a sense at what you're doing, how you can empower cities to, develop their right policies and fast.
Sure. So on the longer term and mid-term, and we'll come back to that later, we can really help cities build a better living environment, help them develop cycling lanes, help them develop pedestrian paths. So that's the core of what we've been doing. And this year, this topic has been actually top of mind. But shorter term, we have done a lot of work as well with local governments, helping them with cockpits to manage crisis, economic crisis, health crisis, as an example. But we have helped as well city officials manage actually the air quality of their buildings. And so we've helped hospitals, we've helped theaters, concert halls, making large simulations of the level of risks that people were taking in this type of buildings. So we could simulate the contamination risk, as example. So the diversity of what we cover can be quite large. And we see that even on this simulation, we are coming back to the virtual twin concept.
So this is what we're seeing on the screen right now. So this is what you've been doing in hospitals, especially during this time of crisis.
Yes. In Paris here, but as well in other places in the world, like in China as well.
Very good. So Simon, I'm guessing that it goes way beyond just helping cities, face COVID. So what's the way forward? What are you doing?
So I think then we can come back to the sustainability topic. I think. In the sustainability objective, it's important that public decision making relies on good data, because good decisions relies on good information. And so what we help cities with first is to create these virtual twins, which are not purely 3D. There is a lot of information in our virtual twins related to mobility systems, related to housing equipment, for instance. And so that's the first element. Then, of course, on top of that, we want city stakeholders to be able to better collaborate with one another to ensure this very good decision-making process to take place. And eventually, when we look back at what we are doing, which is giving back information to cities so that cities can be in a responsibility and can really be empowered, then we are creating something which is similar to a digital utility. So the same way cities provide water to their citizens, they are actually providing good quality data to their citizens.
To take the decisions.
Exactly, which is key to take the decisions.
Right. So I know that you have partnered with authorities in Singapore, in Hong Kong, in Rennes to empower them and help them define, implement better policies more efficiently. And we are lucky because we'll hear about it later on. We've got Fabrice, we've got Guillaume, and we've got Sankar who are going to focus on the different cities they have been working and share the experience with us. But Simon, just very briefly in a couple of sentences, what would you like people to learn today?
So, one, that local governments and cities really are in charge of those sustainability issues. And two, that with the technology we have, with the digital technology we can provide, we can actually help really in solving these sustainability challenges that cities and local governments are responsible for.
So tools, platforms, and expertise, everything that they need to take the right decisions
for the sustainability challenges that they have in front of them.
Brilliant. So thank you, Simon. So as I mentioned, we have a couple of different projects that we'll be focusing on in different cities. So let's start first with the Hong Kong project after that. Well, it's now time to welcome Sankar Villupram, who is the Digital Service and Project Leader at Arup, to give us some background. First, probably, let me give you some background first myself. Arup is an independent firm of designers, planners, engineers, architects, consultants, technical specialists, right?
Yes,
yeah, and all of that. They are working, across every aspect of today's built environment. And Dassault System and Arup have worked together, from what I know, for the Hong Kong government and as part of its smart city blueprint. So Hong Kong wanted to establish a common spatial data infrastructure, CSDI. So Arup and Dassault System jointly proposed the 3D Experience platform as the foundation of the CSDI to Hong Kong's planning department to optimize smart city operation and management. But I'm sure Sankar, who is connected with us, will speak better about it than myself. So Sankar, I don't know if you can hear us. Hello there.
Loud and clear.
Brilliant. So Sankar, it's great to have you here. So I was just saying that, so Arup is dedicated in helping cities and organizations to become more and more resilient. So Sankar, there's indeed this shift in the construction business. The engineering and construction businesses are moving from a historically rule-based business to a data-driven business. And Simon just mentioned how data is key. So what does that mean? And how are they doing it?
Well, let's start. Construction is nothing a new industry at all. It's not a new economy. The first building is Pantheon, which is almost 113 BD, which is like, you're talking 5,000 years of wisdom. And that's why the rules has been created and it's only been enhanced. It's not digested into, concise platform. But what you're witnessing in the last 30 years or 40 years is these rules are being challenged by data. Even if you consider the climatical changes, the number of earthquakes, number of, typhoons, all these things are telling one thing. Your rules are very old. Your rules are going to change. And if you don't change, this will not sustain. And this is where the artificial intelligence and technology, they're bringing the data into this very old industry filled with all wisdom to come and change according to the future needs.
Shankar, but humans and the world economy in general are driven by building more and more things. We're used to that, build things. So how can we build more sustainably? How do you see, the role of local authorities and the public sector in this?
Well, our corporate economies are basically driven by greed, if I may say so. That if you did not do more than what you did, if you did not do more than what you did last year, then you're a failure. That's how we've been always taught in the top schools and top universities. But do we really need more? The whole purpose of the technology here is not to do more, is actually to do more with less. That is the real power of the technology. Instead of just improving the efficiency so that you can construct 100 buildings in a short time, could we actually do with 10 buildings and do the same effect? So that is where the real power of the technology comes in. Today's technology is not about collecting data. It is about the simplification of insights. The sophistication lies in the simplicity. So I believe the real power of technology is not yet unleashed, of doing more with less.
I couldn't agree more, Shankar. So when we talk about sustainability, is it all about smart cities or are there other kind of criteria to think about?
Right. This is my own personal thought. I actually believe in more smart villages and livable cities because COVID has taught us one thing, whether it is Hong Kong, whether it's Singapore, whether it's any cosmopolitan city, which doesn't have basic food produce, who are always depending upon, import of food produce. Suddenly they faced with a challenge like there was nothing left over in the department store from Sydney to Singapore to Hong Kong. Now Singapore is actually taking lead that can I grow potatoes and tomatoes on top of the 80th floor? And this is a real scenario that we would not have imagined last year. So, and this is where the cities are changing and transforming to be self-sufficient and resilient. And these are very important and from a sustainability perspective.
It's great to hear that. Arup and 3DS have recently completed a pilot project with the Hong Kong Planning Department. I think we have a video to watch first, and then we get your feedback on this.
In shaping a better environment for over 70 years. Working in over 140 countries, our designer, consultant, engineer, and architect provide innovative solutions to clients and the communities that we work in, such as delivering the world's first zero-carbon building and developing the first smart district in the cities of Hong Kong. Dassault System and Arup recently completed a project for the city of Hong Kong called the Common Spatial Data Infrastructure Built Environment Application Platform. Now, actually, in the 2017 policy address, the Hong Kong SAR government promoted the establishment of what they call a common spatial data infrastructure in order to make use of innovation and technology in improving the efficiency of the city operation and improving quality of life. These 10 projects comprise 4 areas. Firstly, urban planning and land use, such as we test the walkability and urban design. Second, engineering and infrastructure, such as visualization of underground space, underground utilities. And thirdly, is about the environment and conservation. Lastly, is to test some work processes, such as we establish workflow management plan. The success of this built environment application 10 cases demonstrate that this would be a very useful tool for the government, the private sector, and academic to collaborate in implementing the city of Hong Kong as a smart city in terms of operation and management. Arup domain expertise translate the salt system platform into real value for the built environment. And the SOUL system enable Arup to provide more innovative solutions to our clients, and also in leveraging the digital twin as an asset on this 3D experience platform as a unique collaborative tools. We actually create new business model and provide new services for both the SOUL system and Arup.
Wow, brilliant project. Nice to see the video. Before I get back into the discussion on what we've seen in the video with Simon and Shankar, I would like just to take a look at the survey. So what did you answer to the first question? How many inhabitants in the city or state where you live? So you were 43% to answer more than 1 million. That's brilliant, fantastic. So we have big cities watching us. So, but we also have 20% in more than 10,000 people, which is also great to have like small size cities. So that's brilliant. Thank you guys for participating in this survey and sharing your views with us. So let's get back to what we've just seen in the video. So Shankar, I hope you're still with us. Yes?
Yes, I'm here.
Brilliant. Thank you. So Shankar, this is a fantastic project. So I think you guys must be proud from this partnership. So what are you proudest of in this project, Shankar?
Oh, well, personally for me, it is great to see Hong Kong to be leading that data-related initiative and a city that is actually being driven by data. Of course, there is always a small pleasure that we are doing better than Singapore.
That's a nice word, right?
Yeah. We will see later the virtual Singapore project that we have done as well.
Okay, I was getting back to you, Simon. So what do you think?
No, I think what I'm the proudest of is probably the Arup partnership itself, and as well that we have been able to demonstrate some very actual cases like how to better improve the experience of pedestrians. Those are actually very advanced use cases, and I'm very proud that we have been able to demonstrate these kind of things using the detailed virtual twin and using as well the collaboration capabilities.
Oh, that's brilliant. So a lot of people are saying that there will be a before and after, this year 2020 is very special with COVID. So what do you think are the biggest insights for cities and the construction business overall? I'll start with you, Shankar.
I think for us talking about Hong Kong perspective, actually, we've done extremely well on the construction side. Just in the last 4 months, there are more than 50 billion Hong Kong dollar worth of contracts been awarded. Not just only awarded, but they've been going on a hyper speed, actually. And that actually should give the credit to the city. Being a resilient city, they drive completely all their decision-making based on data. And so that is actually good to see. Without these data, the way they collect the data, they assess the data and make sure that these are really converted into insights and actions. So construction industry definitely in Hong Kong and mainland has been definitely going extremely well, purely data-driven.
And from your perspective, Simon?
I would say this year, I think we have all learned to work differently. And we have been working
in every sector for everyone.
And right now we are actually connected with the opposite side of the world from Paris. So it's a proof that we have learned to work differently. And I think this has impact on how people work with one another. So how they collaborate, how they can lead projects, not being in the same place, but being in remote places. And as well, I think it gives a new way to experience our living environment. How do we live in a city that probably doesn't have the same type of services? And we have seen many cities in the world, for instance, develop these cycling lanes I've mentioned before, and that are actually enforcing them right now.
Brilliant. So we understand from everything I've heard that sustainable development is critical. So do you think that cities and local governments generally have fully embraced the data and digital revolution? Because we've heard that data is essential, is critical, good data is essential and critical. So how it can help? What would you like to see next, Shankar?
Well, it is great actually not only to see a developed, city like Hong Kong and Singapore, but also like cities like Jakarta or even Ho Chi Minh or Bangkok. They are actually going on to this data journey, and it has a bigger impact to these emerging cities, emerging markets. So I hope that more and more cities actually make the decisions on data, because it will break the bureaucracy walls. That is what data can do to a city. It brings in insights and it breaks down the silo barriers of the government, and they will function as one integrated, city management government departments.
Simon, I think we couldn't agree more.
Yeah. I was about to say that I will struggle to complement what Shankar has said, because it's very precisely said.
Well done, Shankar.
What I could add is that this level of maturity of the cities and the city officials probably will grow in the next few years. And so people will understand more and more the usage of data. And maybe they will speak a little less about smart city, but a little more about livable cities, a little more about resilient cities, sustainable cities. And hopefully the digital technology is an enabler for this type of transformation. And so using the virtual world to imagine the real one is really where we want to help cities with. And I hope that this level of maturity will grow, and that we will be able to have more projects like Hong Kong project, like as well the Singapore one.
Oh, brilliant. That's great. Thank you both for focusing on just how much urban development is changing, and discuss about the new pressures that cities are facing and the opportunities behind them. So thank you, Shankar, for having been with us. It's been great. So thank you for sharing your views. We were very happy to have you live with us today. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Asha. Thanks, Simon.
Thank you, Shankar. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Right, now time for our next session on empower urban development and ecosystems, right after this. Well, that was the Hong Kong project. So let's now deep dive into a couple of other concrete examples of how Dassault System is working with cities to help them in their transformation. In our next session, Empowering Urban Development and Ecosystems, Guillaume Lenoël, who is with us here in the studio, who has been leading the project to support Rennes. Rennes, which is a city here in France, very beautiful city. So you have been working on that to help Rennes in its transformation, and you're going to show us what's been going on. So we are very happy to have you.
Hello, I'm very pleased to be here today to explain how we're working with Rennes.
Great. Guillaume, before we start, probably let's just ask our audience here another question, and we can discuss later the results also. So the question is, how do you improve multi-stakeholder collaboration in cities, towns, and regions? So answers are various. So develop cross-organization working groups, ensure citizen involvement in decisions, secure and share quality data for all, and finally, strengthen project management practices. I will be tempted to say everything. So, okay, we'll check the survey later. So, Guillaume, let me get back to you. So, the Rennes city, a city I'm really fond of personally. So, it has been an incredible journey.
Yeah, I'm going to explain and give you some concrete examples of how we help cities transform towards become more sustainable. By using the 3D Experience platform, they are able to define the right policies and rely on their ecosystem to implement them. That's something key. In fact, Rennes is one of the major cities in France. In the recent European ranking, it was even 10 for the quality of life of the citizens. We've been working with them for 5 years to help them, again, become more sustainable, resilient, and attractive. And I think maybe they want to do better than Singapore also.
We're going to run a competition, between the cities to see who does best.
And most importantly, maybe they want to keep a citizen-centric approach anytime, because it is a key priority for them. Let me share a video.
Right, so we have a video to show that. Let's take a look.
Rennes Métropole is a metropolitan public institution. It's a city with a very strong innovation ecosystem, particularly in the digital domain. Rennes Métropole needed to address the complexity of the city and to be able to work with all the region's stakeholders using an innovative tool.
Today, in the city domain, unfortunately we tend to think in silos. But the city doesn't work that way, so we need a more systemic approach for all stakeholders to work better together and collaborate around a common referential that allows them to simulate the evolutions of the city. We have partnered with Dassault Systèmes to help us set up a platform on the cloud called 3D Experience City Virtual Rennes. This will enable all city stakeholders to remotely share data that will allow them to simulate and better observe urban phenomena.
Our goal is to create a digital twin of the city, an intelligent digital model based on geometric and topographical elements, demographic, mobility, and health data, and all other systems.
So they had high expectations.
Yeah. So you've seen what the expectations were. So let's go into the detail and see what we've done actually. First, we are providing virtual RAIN on a web-based platform. Mm-hmm. It logs all the projects, current and future projects, to explain the city to the citizens. So that's something very interesting. In the past, we only used 3D as a one-way communication tool. Today, our virtual twin is really gathering all the information from all the systems and having it at different time frames also. So this allows involving the citizens at the whole steps of the design process.
You mean at an earlier stage, engage them in the conversation?
From early stages to the real definition of the processes. So in fact, we really outperformed the expectation using virtual RAIN. It was really interesting with this. I want to talk about urban design especially. We had a systemic approach to gather all the information and to connect all stakeholders, urban planners, urban designers, architects, engineering offices. They are all able to access aggregated data and share information. This allows reducing project delays, avoiding costly mistakes inside the projects, so that's important. Using the platform, so the platform becomes the place to go where they can find information, reliable information, up-to-date information. Mm-hmm. That's also key. And thanks to the cloud, everyone can access to information and to the services they need. So it can be project management, urban studying tools, social networking capabilities, a lot of things.
In real time, and everybody at the same level of information.
Exactly. And the platform is also then the place where all the knowledge is gathered from all the disciplines that have to work together. So it enables the collaboration between organizations that used to work in silos, and now they can really work together.
Have a collaborative
tool. And also use the virtual twin as a simulating environment to simulate options virtually before deciding. So, a lot of things to say.
Yeah, a lot of things to say. One thing that struck me was also greener. The city has become greener than it used to be before.
Basically, they want to redefine their urban policies. Mm-hmm. So, for example, rethink the balance between buildings, vegetation, infrastructures. If we look at green spaces, today we are almost at 20% of coverage. We want to reach 30% by 2030. Mm-hmm. Why is it so important to have this indicator in mind? Is that it is related to major drivers of the city, the well-being of the citizens, the biodiversity, and the climate effect changes. So we can measure how important is it to follow up this policy. Another example is that, for example, they're thinking of having all the basic services like healthcare services, shops, and parks at less than 15 minutes than to everyone's home. And we've seen during the COVID crisis how important this
that
was.
Right. Yeah. And it's becoming even more and more important to reach that kind of policies.
More important. If we go deeper into the detail at a smaller scale for the vegetation, we are able to provide technical information, again, to improve the decision-making process. For the trees, we can go at the scale of one street and see the evolution of the trees for between 2014 and 2017, for example.
So you have some history there, and you see the evolution.
Studying the past to better plan the future and forecast.
Brilliant.
We have this for many of the urban policies. And sometimes we have to go even deeper into the details to ever better understand things. And for the vegetation, we have been able to enrich our virtual twin with some very accurate representation of the trees. Then we are able to measure the canopy, anticipate the biomass they can create, the shade they deliver, how much care they will need. These are very interesting to, for example, define your planting of the trees, avoid having them too close together.
And how you take care of them for the city, they
and
get
you
the
will
information.
have to take care of them for a long time afterwards, so you have to think about it before. Another key element of the project is the communication with the citizens. So, as I said, it is a priority. The 3D modeling really makes it easier to explain how the city is transforming and what the plans are. Rennes has set a project home where all the citizens can come whenever they want, just to get information about their city. And they are also organizing workshops, dedicated workshops for children, for example, to explain what are the projects concerning
for the city,
for their future, for their school sometimes.
That's brilliant.
So we had, I think, a very great example of interaction between the city and the citizens there.
I think it's important to tell the audience that you have been working on this project for how long?
Now it's almost 6 years.
6 years, and there's still a lot of things to do, and you've achieved so much.
Yeah. Cities, the way they define their future has changed, and Virtual Rennes supports this transformation. So on one side, it enables them to define the right policies and make all the stakeholders work together to implement them. We've seen also that it changes the way we can communicate to the citizen, involving them much earlier in the design process and all along this process. So we are working with them. We have now a solid partnership with them, still a lot to do. And it has helped a lot us to define our solution, also what we want to provide for cities, to help them build a more citizen-centric city, resilient and sustainable. So we have a solution called Inclusive Urban Future that all the cities can now have.
Fantastic, Guillaume. Thank you for sharing. I think it was an interesting project to see with all the pictures and to see it because it's hard to explain without really visualizing it. So I think it's kind of nice to see that. Simo, I'm tempted to ask, why do you pick Rennes?
Very good question. I'll start by the easy answer.
Okay.
So you said Rennes is a beautiful city and so on, but Rennes is as well the place where we have our global R&D taking care of city.
Okay.
So of course it's very easy and it's very straightforward to have the partnership where we are located because we are really in the middle of city creating this innovation together with them, with the team, with the best teams. Of course, this is our team, so they are the best. And
obviously.
I would say the second reason is that Rennes, and no offense, is a very typical case of a city like we can have thousands of cities like this in the world. Rennes is about 500,000 inhabitants. It's a mid-sized city with a mid-level density. And there are many other cities similar to Rennes in Europe.
Same
features. So what we have seen and what Guillaume has described with a lot of accuracy is we can actually see the beginning of what I was explaining earlier, the digital utility concepts. And so we can really understand how this REN is actually leading the way for other similar cities in Europe, but even beyond Europe in the world, who can actually leverage this kind of experience to implement this new policy creation practice, this new collaboration practice with the ecosystem, and of course, this ability to better communicate with the citizens.
Fantastic. Oh, let's have a look at the survey. So I don't know if I can see it properly. I can see 19% answered develop cross-organization working groups and 41% ensure citizen involvement in decisions. And we have, I think that's 41% for the second answer, 27% secure and share quality data for all, and 14% the last answer, strengthen project management practices. I would go for all, but obviously it's I think it's very relevant when you see that people want to be involved in the decision making of cities. This is something very key. We realize it more and more. You've seen it yourself.
I think there's still a lack of transparency and for the citizen in almost every city. So it's still a priority in most of the areas.
Yes, definitely.
Super. So we spoke about it already, some green spaces and collaborative working, but we're going to go in more detail. So let's now turn to more details on green spaces and collaborative working right after this. Well, now we're going to see how cities define better policies for more energy efficiency and more sustainable mobility. To give us more insight into the power of the virtual twin we've heard a lot and the free experience platforms, please welcome Fabrice Servant, who is the Construction Cities and Territories Solution Experience Senior Manager at Dassault Systèmes. Fabrice, how are you? Can you hear us?
Very well.
It's good. Where are you based, Fabrice?
I'm based in Lausanne, Switzerland.
Oh, great. So it's beautiful too. Right. So Fabrice, before we start, probably let's take another survey for the audience here. So the question is, what sustainable actions would you like cities to accelerate in 2021? Or what would you like to see in cities in 2021? Simply less cars, more energy efficiency, more digital communications, more cycling or pedestrian routes, or more green spaces. I'm not going to be very original. I think all of them is great. Well, I'll give you some time to answer to this survey. I think it would be interesting just to discuss that later on. So Fabrice, welcome. So it's great to have you with us. In a nutshell, what would you say is Dassault Systèmes' main role in helping cities map out a sustainable future? I know it's a big question.
It is. So our objective is simple. We want to help authorities to improve citizens' lives. And that means to help them transform their cities, to develop better policies, to adapt to crises, and to ensure a more sustainable future. So we keep hearing about climate change, and it's in cities that it can be solved. You know, I like this image of Singapore because you can see everything in the same picture. You have the industrial area on the left with the harbor. You have a business center in the middle. You have housing on the right. You have commercial buildings at the first level, and even museums and sport. And so you see, cities are complex environment, and running multiple projects at the same time can be very complicated. So one of the aspect beyond project management is to help agencies and technical departments to better communicate with the city council, and then to make them understand what's at stake and help the city representative to engage with the citizens. That goes back to the previous survey. So for policies, it's also the same story. Policies are very abstract. It's more abstract than drawings for a construction project. And so we want our solution to provide 3 pillars to help authorities. One is going to be a collaborative platform to host their common data environment, a project management application to drive their projects in the context of their data, and then a powerful visualization module to help understand the complete situation. And that's what we call the 3D Experience Virtual Twin. And that makes possible to all stakeholders to share data, access data, reliable data, which are up to date continuously, to collaborate during the entire process, and to spot and solve issues. And so with industrial customer, we saw improved productivity from 25 to 60%. And that's the type of productivity that is improving the well-being of agents. So that's also a good thing.
All right. So Fawaz, what are the biggest challenges that cities have to face, and how do you overcome them?
So I think the biggest challenges is time, in fact, because you have to manage constantly the short time and the longer time. So on the short time, you see the way you have to react to crisis. So we can see a lot of new cycling lanes flourishing everywhere. And then on the long term, you have to cope with causes and results of climate change. So if we want to look at metrics, I think it's always important to look at that. If we look at the greenhouse gas generated to create energy, we can see that there are three levers on which cities can play. So the first one is buildings, which is the main part, more than 50% of the emissions. Then you have transportation and logistics, which is between 30 to 40%, depending on cities. And then everything else is waste management, 10 to 20%. So for instance, if you take Rennes City, they were facing huge traffic jam at rush hour. So they consider adding a metro line, which is very costly. It's also use a lot of energy. And then the research we saw when we were working with them is that just a small percentage of extra cars is causing that. So they did two smart things. First, they changed the university start times, which was very popular among students. And then they appealed people to do carpooling. And so they communicate in a very responsible manner with citizens, and they were able to generate the right shifts in behaviors. And so you see, cities are very smart. They always had to be smart. They always had to anticipate, to transform, to adjust to new issues. Managing a city is not a static process, but they need to transform in a coordinated way. And that's not very simple when you have a lot of decision makers used to work in silos. And so our platform is able to create a virtual model based on shared data. And so you can understand how it operates and then identify potential area of improvement.
Fabulous. You mentioned energy. So let us focus for a minute on clean energy efficiency, which is a major sustainability and budget consideration for individuals, corporates, public utilities, public buildings. So you are working with several cities on ensuring more energy efficiency. So probably tell us a little bit, what are the solutions and services that you're offering to them?
Yes, energy consumption is a big problem. It's a big budget. But the problem is that for private homeowner, it's a bit of a different story. Because the investment that you need to generate savings, if you want to change your window, insulate your walls, put a central temperature control, it's an important investment for a private homeowner. And it will generate returns only after a few years. So usually people don't do it. So that's why you need to incentivize. So we worked with a company named Énergie Demain, and they were doing an analysis at a very granular level. First of all, they were analyzing energy losses for every building. And then they were looking at the solar potential for all the buildings. So that way, you are able to manage a bit better you are able to know exactly which building needs to be upgraded. And after that, you can aggregate all this data at the level of the territory. And then you can see which area you need to focus on, because incentives, they require money. Basically, it's a cost for city. And so you need to be a bit careful of, and you want to target that to the right areas. So that's what we can see on the map here, when you have the red area where you should focus your incentives. And that's the platform, once again, which is helping you to aggregate the different results and analysis and to take the best decision.
Right. Famai, so we spoke to Shankar earlier on the Hong Kong project, but Dassault Systèmes was also actively involved in Singapore's rethink of their mobility policy. Probably can you tell us a little bit about the key issues, how you tackled them?
So we went to Singapore. So I stayed there for 3 years working on the virtual Singapore project, so I know that a bit well. So the thing is that in Singapore, they started, the video you're going to see is 2016, 2017. So they started to work on cycling lanes because they have different issues. Health is a big problem in Singapore because 30% of people have diabetes. So here we are using the virtual twin that we built with them. So where you can find, of course, everything related to the point of interest. We can see also some social data. Here we are displaying the price of the different of housing here in the area. And so to improve health, they wanted to promote active mobility, either walking or cycling. So if you live there and you want to go to the nearest swimming pool, then if you want to take your bike, we are going to run an analysis of is it safe or not, because that's one of the main questions. Is it safe? And even though today traffic jam are very well managed in Singapore, it was designed for car. And so initially the trip to go there was very dangerous. And so that's why they started to build cycling lanes. And now you see that, for instance, for this trip, it's fully safe because you can travel from one place to another just following cycling lanes. The thing is that this it not only stop at this level where it's at the macro level, you also have to work at the micro level. And here we are also looking at how to adapt the housing. So the ground floor usually in social housing it's a void area that was saved to be able to for the other usage. And so here we are also using the virtual twin to be able to place very sophisticated bicycle racks, so we can put two levels of bicycles. And so what's important is that, in fact, in Singapore, they were doing that some years ago, and now you can see that there are plans everywhere to do cycling lanes, and COVID has just accelerated that.
Mm-hmm. Harry, so you probably have a message for Shankar, who thinks his project is more exciting and better. I'm kidding. Well done. That was brilliant. Thank you for sharing that, Fabrice. Probably let's take a few seconds to look at the survey results, what the audience have answered to the question, what sustainable actions would you like cities to accelerate in 2021? So we have 32% less cars, more energy efficiency, 29%, 22% more green spaces, and for the rest, right, more digital communications and more cycling, pedestrian routes. So that's pretty much it's not surprising, I think, to see less cars. That's a big issue. Yeah,
32% is quite high, I would say.
Oh, yeah?
So most likely maybe the people attending are not representative, or as they are not driving currently, they are okay to click on less cars. But maybe if they were driving, maybe they will not click on less cars.
But I agree, less cars, less cars, less cars. I don't drive, I don't care.
What's also pretty interesting, if you look at that, is that you see how balanced you have to manage things. Mm. It's not just one solution that's going to solve everything. You have to work in different axes. And the good thing from that survey is that people believe that they have enough digital communication. That's good.
Thank you so much, Fabrice. It was great to have you. So are you staying with us for the Q&A? Maybe, I don't know, you can stick around if you don't have other things to do, but we're happy to have you. So let's now move on to the Q&A session. This is great because we can see there are lots of questions that you guys are sending. Keep sending them. And we will be back right after this. Well, will conclude this session. As I mentioned, it's time to take a few questions. There were many of you sending a lot of questions, and thank you very much for that. So Simon and Guillaume are here. So, we've covered a lot of ground today, and there's lots of things that we've seen. So the question of cities is very, very exciting. So let's probably look at one of the questions we have here on the platform. So how do you include long-term impact variables into the solutions? Decision, transportation system, impact environment. I think they're talking about the platform itself.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think this comes back to the notion we developed earlier, which is the good data for making good decisions. And so the data we have or we can include is not purely 3D, it's not purely the description of an asset, but it includes as well capabilities, behavior of the systems we have in cities. So this can be a description of how a mobility system works, or this can be the description of, for instance, the green mass that you described, Guillaume, I think, on the Rennes example. And this is not purely based on the current time. This is, we can have a historical approach, so we can take this type of data over a multiple time range. And on top of that, we can perform simulation, and we can embed as well simulation from other simulation algorithms that can be very specialized sometimes. With this, we can give actually not purely a picture of what is happening now, but we can give a picture of what will be happening, what has happened. And we can give as well this what if scenario approach that has been presented by Fabrice in the cycling lane example, or by Guillaume in the green area development example in Rennes.
Right. So another interesting question on the value of data. So how do you measure the value of data, especially the return on investment? I think that's, you mentioned data is essential, good data is essential. Yes. So how do you do the rest?
One way I think to look at it is what is return on investment for a city. And so I think it comes back at the very beginning to what are the objectives of cities, most likely around citizen well-being. And so the return on investment, if we may use these words, will be around typical criteria that are evaluating public policies. So there is, from my view, not specifically a detailed, digitally inspired ROI. The return on investments of the type of solution we offer are fundamentally deep rooted inside the public policies that we support. And so the return on investment will be around the criteria that cities already measure, like how long do you need to go from one place to another? What is the overall level of health of a given population? Those kind of metrics, I would say.
Right.
Maybe Guillaume, you want to add something?
I think,
here?
Yeah, they have more and more data, in fact, and I think they are convinced that they are missing part of the value. And so they think that having some new tools to help them get this value that is somewhere in their services, but they can't get it. So that's something we are really able to provide.
Well, that's brilliant. Questions on reducing CO2 emissions in cities. So to reduce CO2 emissions in city is largely dependent on reducing the number of cars. We spoke about cars. So how can cities, help? You can help cities in this transition. Where do you think you can add most value?
Okay. A lot of things here. And I don't claim I will be able to cover everything, and I will ask Guillaume and Fabrice help, most likely. One element is by helping design what the city will look like in the future. So designing new streets, designing the new cycling path that we have seen, improving the pedestrian experience. If we make it easier to walk between two different places, we can help reduce the number of cars. Above that, we can help as a company. We have as well a lot of background in the mobility industry, and so we work a lot with automotive companies as well as the ecosystem of automotive industry to develop new type of cars that will be autonomous or partly autonomous, that can give new type of solutions to live in a city, not owning a car, but sharing a car from a pool, for instance, which can reduce the overall number of cars in a city.
Guillaume, you want to add something?
Yeah, I think there is something about the planning. If we look at REN, there is the midterm planning for mobility, which gives the guidelines for the next 5 to 8 years. For example, 200 more cycling paths. So we can help on this. And then there is the engineering that will come to analyze the situation and set where we will put all those new equipments. And we are able also to help them do it in a more collaborative way, ensure that we are always aligned with the objectives that have been defined at the beginning.
All right. Maybe Fabrice, if you're still with us?
Yeah. Well, a lot has been said already, but something that we sometimes underestimate is that there are data already in cities, but they don't flow. And so, for instance, sometimes you can have data based on car traffic, which is on somewhere, and you have information about the public transport, which is somewhere else. And if you really want to tackle the transport issues, you have to recombine them. And you also have to take some new services into account. So if you don't have a workplace to aggregate all that, complicated to take decisions.
Thanks, Fabrice. We have another question here. So as you mentioned, we've lived through wildfires, heat waves, major floods, Europe, in Australia, in the US. How can you work with cities and territories to help them anticipate better, improve their response? We've covered a little bit the topic. Probably if you want to add a few things there.
Maybe one element I can say is that what we have presented from development of greener areas in cities or development of cycling lanes were examples of a more generic topic, which is developing, I would say, data enlightened public policies. And those public policies are not especially short term. Some of them are actually more mid to long term. And so the cases we have here are actually other examples where gathering information, making sure that people share the same understanding, making them collaborate with one another, taking public policies, taking decisions and enacting public policies. And in the meantime, if more simulation is needed, if more stakeholders involvement is needed, that's typically the type of exercises that we do with the 3D Experience platform.
Right. So did it happen before that people or some departments were reluctant to use the platform? I have a question that was based on that. I can't see it anymore, but was there somebody asking, for example, if,
We work as well with police forces. So we actually call the police and we ask them to enforce the usage of the platform.
Because the police force also uses the platform, right?
No. So coming back to a more serious answer. A collaboration platform, of course, requires people to participate. Voluntarily. Here, there is an incentive. First, we work with cities. And so we are not promoting a Dassault Systems platform in the middle of an ecosystem that is not expecting us. We are actually a third-party partner of the city, and we are a trusted third-party partner. And so the city itself is enforcing the usage for collaboration of for their benefits. And so third-party of the cities, actually, they use it because everyone else uses it as they want to work with the cities.
Right. So we are almost at the end of the show, and I will take one last question. Probably, what do you see, all of you, Fabrice, Guillaume, and Simon, what do you see as the priorities for 2021? To make cities more sustainable. What is your wish list? What would you like to see happen? For me, it's less cars, obviously, but who cares? I listen to you guys.
I am Dassault Systems, so I like, of course, to see more virtual twins projects of cities. More seriously, again, I would say there is a great potential for using digital technology for solving some sustainability challenges, and we have presented some example. So I really wish that we could see more of those examples in the world about development of those new ways of displacing people, for instance, moving people from A to B.
And Fabrice, sorry, I interrupted you, Guillaume. I was, Guillaume,
maybe projects where we can see professionals and citizens working together, having more collective intelligence, see how we can hold together, rethink the city and make it happen.
Brilliant. And Fabrice, what would that be for you?
No, but that's the thing. The idea is really to remove the friction. We have to move faster. And that's what is important today. And we have to embrace the right technology to do it.
Right.
That's what I hope for cities.
Great. So, Simon, we've reached the end. Probably just one final word before we leave here.
I think what we wanted to present here is really examples of how digital technology can actually help sustainability issues. It's not a short-term journey, it's a long-term journey. And to everyone who are listening to us, I hope they have understood that Dassault Systèmes is actually here to help them.
Brilliant. I think the message is clear and neat and loud, right? So that brings us to the end of the Q&A session. Thank you to all of you for your questions and for being with us today. I have a couple of announcements to make. So the replay and the key takeaways of this event will be available in a couple of days on the platform on the freeds.com website. So don't hesitate to ask any, demonstration with Dassault Systèmes teams of experts. They are always available to show you what they can do. Thank you very much to all our speakers today. Shankar, who's not here with us, but thank you, Shankar. Simon, Guillaume, Fabrice, all of you, thank you very much. It was very insightful. I learned a lot of things myself on cities today, so that's brilliant. And of course, if you want more information on construction, cities, territories, please visit Dassault Systèmes website. You can follow the link on the chat that you can see right now. And also Dassault Systèmes teams and speakers will be glad to follow up any questions that were not covered today because of time. So it was a real pleasure to spend this hour with you this morning or this afternoon, depending on where you are. And we hope that you enjoyed this program. We hope to see you again. Until next time, goodbye.
Thank you, Asha.
Thank you. Bye-bye.